Good evening all and welcome to another video on All Hail the Ale. It's Friday night, which means it's alcohol free night. And the video we're doing tonight is not what I really want to do, but it's one that I'm going to do. I'm going to take one for the team and find out which is the worst alcohol free beer of all time. And it's got two contenders to that title, and it's these two. It is St. Peter's Without and Doom Bar Zero. What can I say about the two beers? I did a rewind on this one not too long ago because I had it in my head that maybe I was too harsh on the original review, and I thought to myself, let's give it another go. Let's be fair. And I found it to be equally depressing and not to my liking as the first time. Whereas the Doom Bar Zero, this one, again, I think in my original review, I described it as tasting like fermented sprouts, which is never a good thing when you're drinking a beer. So I thought we'd revisit that one today and compare them side by side for the worst beer of 2024, alcohol free anyway. How are we going to score this one? Well, it's going to be the same kind of review that I would normally do when I do a blindfold taste test. Except I'm not doing it blindfolded, and we're going to award the points in the usual way, and the beer with the least amount of points at the end is going to be the loser, or rather the winner of the worst alcohol-free beer ever. Not just 2024, ever. We're going to go that far in terms of sticking our neck on the line and saying exactly that. So yeah, if the beer wins, it will get a point. If it loses, it gets no points. The less points, the loser, or rather the winner, whichever way you look at it. So, in keeping it fair, we're going to pour them both into the same style of glass. So we're going to start with the St. Peter's Without on the pour. We're going to pour that into my Tiny Rebel 10th birthday glass. Let's put that there so I can grab it. Schooner style. So the pour is, much as it was the other day, a rather alright looking beer. Amber in colour and a pretty reasonable off-white head. Visually, it's not a bad looking beer, is it? Let's be honest. It is not a bad looking beer. Looks the part, but we all know that looks can be deceiving. So with that in mind, we're going to pour the Doom Bar Zero into a standard Tiny Rebel schooner. Why Tiny Rebel? I'm not picking on them for any particular reason. It's just that I have two glasses that are the same and they're different, if that makes sense. So Doom Bar Zero pours, a similar colour, maybe a little paler, maybe a little bit more clear, and certainly got a looser head. Looks a little bit lighter to my eye. Get them side by side again. Up to the light. It's really subtle. It is really, really subtle, the difference between the two. But for purposes of this one, we're going to give the first point for visuals to St. Peter's Without. But let's show you the board first, like that. Empty. So St. Peter's Without gets a point for the visuals because whilst the colours are almost identical, the head is slightly nicer on the St. Peter's. In as much as it's a little bit tighter, it just looks a little bit more. It looks a little bit more, if that makes sense. It's loose on the Doom Bar. Can you catch that? On the original pour, this was much tighter. So we're going to go for the Aroma next, and we're going to start with what I can't remember the most, which is the Doom Bar. And it smells bad. Is it bad? It's very light. It is a little bit malty, but it's almost dank in a bad way. Like stagnant almost, and it's got that almost slightly off sprouts aroma still. Let's have a little bit of a swirl. It's not much. Yes, it's a sweet malt, a little bit kind of damp smelling, not dank, damp. Anyway, so the St. Peter's, oh, it's a bigger aroma. It's much more in your face and unpleasant. Oh, why do I do this to myself? Why? It's because you don't have to then. But yeah, the Doom Bar, whilst it smells damp and light, it's less offensive than the St. Peter's, which means the Doom Bar gets the point on the aroma. And as for the body, well, we're going to start with the loser of the last round, which was St. Peter's. So we're going to have a taste of that one first, and I know what's coming. So I'm not looking forward to this. But as for the body, it's a reasonable body. It is a reasonable body. It's medium weight. It's good in the mouth in terms of the mouth feel. That was the one thing I couldn't criticise about the beer overall when I was giving it objective scoring. And the Doom Bar, it's lighter, it's more carbonated. Yeah, it's lighter and more carbonated. Let's go in for another sip just to make sure. Yeah, it's quite carbonated. And back to this one. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh. So the weight between the two, the St. Peter's is slightly heavier. The Doom Bar is more open, slightly lighter. I prefer the mouthfeel and the weight of the St. Peter's, which is there. So the flavour. The flavour is arguably the most important thing about a beer, and in this instance, I was never particularly complimentary about either beers, particularly the St. Peter's. So we're going to go with the loser of the last round, which is the Doom Bar, and we're going to be objective. We're going to be honest. It's malty, light. There is a level of hop. It's bland, but by comparison to this, it's not as offensive in any way, shape, or form. Whereas this one, oh my days, it's sickeningly sweet. It's malty, sweet, and offensive to my palate. There's a clear winner on the point of this one, and the point has to go to the Doom Bar because it is less offensive, and it's less offensive in as much as it's bland. Now, going back to my original thought, yes, the smell is not great, but compared to the St. Peter's, it tastes wonderful. It's light, it's malty, and I don't think, if my memory serves, it's as bad as I remember it. I'm going to be brutally honest. I think I'm going to have to do a separate rewind on Doom Bar after this and see, in isolation, how is it? Because right now I've got the offensive taste of the St. Peter's versus the bland, not an awful lot of Doom Bar. So we come down to the decider. Or do we? I don't know. We'll find out. The finish on a beer like this, I like them to be warming, malty, slightly hoppy, a little bit fruity, and generally quite warming. So we're going to go with the loser of the last round, first of all, which is the St. Peter's without. God help me. See what I did there. Yeah, it's sugary sweet all the way through the finish. There is a hint of something Weetabix like still, which, don't get me wrong, for breakfast is great, but not so much when you're drinking a beer. But that sugary, sickly sweetness kills it for me. Whereas the Doom Bar, to make Doombar taste great, drink it next to without. The Doombar is malty. It's not as sweet. There is a little hint of the brown twiggy hop. Not massive, but there is some. And it's not particularly fruity, but it's the clear winner here. It is a little bit. It's a little bit more. It's more acceptable to my palate. So much so, I'm going to go for that other sip. Yeah. By comparison, the Doombar is brilliant. Yeah, it's a clear winner as a finish point. Malty, light, slightly hoppy, twiggy, which in this instance is a good thing. So the taste off reveals that Doombar has 3 points out of 5, whereas St. Peter's Without has 2, which makes St. Peter's Without the winner of the worst alcohol-free beer of all time. So 2 points to you, 3 points to you, and yeah, there we go. I'm going to be honest. That was it went exactly the way I thought it would. 3-2, which makes St. Peter's the loser, and by virtue the winner. Yeah, I fully expected it to go that way because I remember how repulsive to my palate that St. Peter's Without is. And this is not a dig at the brewers. You know, they've made it, they enjoy it. You know, it's obviously brewed to their recipe and it works for them. And beer is very, very, very subjective. You either like it or you don't. And I am in the camp here that I don't like St. Peter's Without. I still don't particularly like Doombar Zero, but it is better than I remembered it by quite some way. And I will probably, well, I'm going to drink them both because I'm too tight not to. But out of the two, this one will never be purchased again. This one probably won't, but here we are. There's not many amber ales in the alcohol-free category. These are two of them. I wish there were more. I really do. There have been a couple whose breweries shall remain nameless in this video, but I'll link them somewhere. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And they did an amber. Well, it was amber in colour anyway. And it was a great tasting beer, and there should be more. But yeah, as it says here, spicy, resinous hop, sweet roasted malts on the aroma. I didn't get any of that. Balanced, succulent dried fruit, lightly roasted malt taste. Finishes Moorish and subtle bitterness. Succulent dried fruit, roasted malt, balanced. Yeah, I can't disagree with that now. I come back to it. Tastes best chilled, yes. Great with seafood. I don't like seafood. But in the St. Peter's Without, it tells me not a lot. Rich and malty taste, bursting with lasting flavour. It definitely lasts. There is no denying that. But yeah, I'm in danger of waffling. I want to know from you guys who've had both of these beers, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the Doombar? Do you prefer the St. Peter's Without? Let me know in the comments section below. And we'll leave it there and say, these have been the beers. I've been me. Them down there are the buttons. You know exactly what to do with them by now. You've got your like, comment, dislike, and subscribe. Choose any combination of them as you wish. And I will see you again soon for another one. Bye for now.